in less than 48 hours. How will Israel retaliate against Iran? For years, Iran and Israel have been carrying out covert sabotage and assassinations against each other, avoiding direct confrontation. But with Israel's invasion of southern Lebanon this week and Iran's second missile launch at Israel, in less than 6 months, the two countries are approaching open confrontation according to a report by the Washington Post. On October 6, Israel plans to launch a large-scale strike against Iran within the next 48 hours. According to a report by the New York Times, the targets of Israel's attack may be Iran's oil facilities, military facilities, and nuclear facilities. The following is an overview of possible Israeli attacks. Striking Iran's oil facilities. Iran's oil and gas facilities are mostly concentrated in the west of the country, near Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. A considerable number of facilities are located along the Iranian coast or on islands, such as its oil export terminal on Karg Island in the Persian Gulf. Damaging oil facilities could harm Iran's already fragile economy and disrupt the global oil market 1 month before the U.S. elections. Iran produces about 3 million barrels of oil per day, accounting for about 3% of the world's supply. Striking Iran's nuclear facilities. Israel views Iran's nuclear program as a threat to its existence, but Israeli officials said they currently have no plans to attack Iran's nuclear facilities, including uranium production and enrichment plants, uranium mines, and research reactors. It would be very difficult to attack nuclear facilities without the help of the United States, because many are located deep underground. Biden said on Wednesday that he would not support an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities if Israel wants to use its powerful air force to retaliate. It must fly a very long distance. But recently Israel has shown that it can do this. In last week's attack on the Houthi rebels in Yemen, the Israeli army flew more than 1,000 miles, using reconnaissance aircraft and dozens of fighter jets to attack power plants and shipping infrastructure. The distance to conduct an airstrike on Iran is similar, but more dangerous. Iran's air defense capabilities are much stronger than those of Lebanon and Yemen. In April this year, to retaliate against Iran's first missile launch, Israel's airstrike destroyed the S-300 air defense system near Natanz. Natanz is a city in central Iran and is crucial to the country's nuclear weapons program. Western and Iranian officials said that Israel deployed aerial drones in that attack and launched at least one missile from fighter jets. Grant Rumley, a former Pentagon official and senior fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, said, "I think they are likely to imitate the April operation and try to destroy Iran's early warning system and air defense system to make room for airstrikes. The question is how far they will invade Iranian airspace and whether they will enter Iranian airspace. But Israel may not have to rely solely on the Air Force to attack." According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a Washington think tank, Israel has other options. They have the Jericho to medium-range ballistic missile that can fly about 2,000 miles and the Jericho 3 long-range ballistic missile that can hit targets more than 4,000 miles away. What does firmly supporting Israel mean for the United States? Despite the escalating situation in the Middle East, the United States' firm support for Israel does not seem to waver at all. Experts generally believe that Washington's stance of supporting Israel will also have an impact on the upcoming U.S. elections. U.S. President Biden once again emphasized U.S. support for Israel on Wednesday. President Biden wrote on the social media platform X that when meeting with the G7 leaders, "I once again emphasized the United States' firm commitment to defending Israel's security." Biden emphasized his stance of supporting Israel at a time when the situation in the Middle East is increasingly tense. On October 7 last year, Hamas, which has been designated as a terrorist organization by the United States, the European Union, and some other countries, launched an attack on Israel. In the attack, About 1,200 people were killed and nearly 250 people were taken hostage by Hamas. Some of the hostages are still being detained in the Gaza Strip. In response, Israel launched a large-scale military operation in the Gaza Strip with the goal of completely eliminating Hamas and rescuing the hostages. Since the beginning of the military operation, more than 40,000 people have been killed in the Gaza Strip, including some civilians. At the same time, the armed conflict between the Israeli army and the Lebanese Hezbollah militia is also intensifying. As an ally of Hamas, Hezbollah has been continuously firing rockets into Israeli territory from northern Israel. On Monday this week, Israel launched a ground offensive in Lebanon. And last weekend, Hezbollah leader Nasser Allah was assassinated. U.S. officials said that the U.S. hopes to avoid a large-scale war in the Middle East and hopes to facilitate the release of hostages in exchange for a ceasefire. However, after Iran launched a large-scale missile attack on Israel on Tuesday, the possibility of an escalation of the conflict has far exceeded the possibility of achieving a ceasefire. Biden and Netanyahu a complex relationship. In dealing with the Israel-Hamas war, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is facing a lot of pressure at home. Critics believe that Netanyahu's tough stance has made the possibility of Hamas releasing hostages even more slim. As Israel's most important ally, although the United States has been trying to exert influence on Israel to allow more relief supplies to be transported to the Gaza Strip, it has also increased its arms aid to Israel. Biden once again emphasized on Wednesday that Washington's firm support for Israel will not waver. Jonathan Panikoff, director of the Scowcroft Middle East Security Initiative at the Atlantic Council think tank, told Deutsche Welle, "It is very important that the relationship between President Biden and Israel cannot be confused with the relationship between President Biden and Netanyahu. But his commitment to Israel and Israel's security has always been very firm." Panikoff said that the U.S. helping Israel defend against the missiles launched by Iran on Tuesday is a full manifestation of this commitment. However, William Wexler, senior director of the Rafik Hariri Center and the Middle East Project at the Atlantic Council, believes that the personal trust between Biden and Netanyahu is not high. He said, "A week ago, the United States was doing its best to facilitate a 21-day ceasefire agreement on the Lebanon-Israel border, and the U.S. is communicating with Israel about this every day. While at the same time, the Israelis are planning the assassination of Nasser Allah. But the Israelis did not inform the Biden administration of their plans. This experience has greatly reduced the level of trust between them. The risk of the United States being involved in the Middle East war is increasing day by day." After Iran launched a missile attack on Israel on Tuesday, Netanyahu said, "Iran made a serious mistake tonight and will pay the price for it." Observers generally worry that in retaliation, Israel will launch missile attacks on targets inside Iran. Israel's retaliatory actions against Iran and its military operations in Lebanon may both led to a large-scale war with serious consequences. Wexler said that in the event of a war, Hezbollah militias may launch hundreds of thousands of rockets at Israel, overwhelming Israel's Iron Dome defense system. Iran may also launch enough missiles at Israel to make the air defense system deployed by the United States in Israel unable to cope, Wexler said. There is also a possibility in war that Israel will take preemptive action and try to destroy a large number of weapons of Hezbollah and Iran to prevent attacks from them. This will put a large number of innocents in danger because Hezbollah intentionally hides weapons among innocents. Wexler said, "If it really comes to this, Americans living in Israel, U.S. military bases in the Middle East, and America's partners in the Gulf will be in danger. Then, the United States is very likely to get involved in the war." Although American voters are most concerned about domestic issues, U.S. support for Israel may also become a major factor affecting the election. as can be seen from the pro-Palestinian protest rallies that spread across major American campuses last spring. Some Americans are very concerned about the role played by the United States in the Middle East conflict in Michigan, which has a large number of Arab American voters. About 100,000 Republican voters did not cast their ballots for then Democratic presidential candidate Biden but cast undecided votes during the party primary. And the initiator of mobilizing voters to cast undecided votes is precisely the opposition to the Biden administration's stance of supporting Israel in the Israel-Hamas war. In the 2020 presidential election, President Biden won Michigan by a margin of only 154,000. Panikoff believes that based on Harris's stance of supporting Israel, it will prompt some people to change their voting intentions. And this may have an impact on the election situation in specific swing states and even the entire United States. Is it entirely possible that Michigan voters who pay attention to the situation in Gaza will have an impact on the election results in Michigan and make the election situation in the state favorable to Trump? Panikoff said, "I think the situation in Pennsylvania may be similar. If this happens, it will be very difficult for Vice President Harris to win the general election."